Alright, hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Laura, this is Bailey, and up until now on my channel I have described myself at times as undiagnosed ADHD, and that is no longer the case, so let's talk about it. Alright, so hi, I'm Laura. I have a weird accent. I am from New Zealand, and here on my channel I talk about mental health, minimalism, and currently I am pregnant with my first child, and my husband, who is a classical musician, and I and our dog are moving to the other side of the world 10 weeks from now to Germany. So there's a lot going on at the moment. And so in the midst of all of this, I finally had my ADHD assessment, and so I wanted to tell you guys about that, about the process that I had to go through, about my experience with it, and what the conclusion was of all of that. So let's get into it. Firstly, the process of getting an appointment to be evaluated for ADHD. So my mental health journey has been going on for about 3 or 4 years now. It started during COVID, as I think it did for a lot of us, where things got to be too much for me. I reached out through my husband's EAP, Employee Assistant Program, to get some therapy. And I did that, and that was helpful. And that kind of carried on for a few years. And during that time, my therapist, who is just a counselor, so can't diagnose specifically, said that based on his observations, it seemed that I had a generalized anxiety disorder and could benefit from anti-anxiety medication, but that I would need to go to my doctor, to my general practitioner, to be diagnosed. So a year or so in, I went to my doctor, explained, what I was experiencing. That was a really big deal for me. That was really, really scary. It was a younger doctor who was on sort of doctor training, where they go and they do a bunch of different things. She was really, really lovely. And so from that, I was put on sertraline, also known as Zoloft. I started on 50 milligrams. And then a year or so in, I felt that it wasn't really doing as much as I had hoped, and so I upped that to 100 milligrams, and I was doing quite well from them. The issue that I had, and the reason why I then sought more diagnosis, was that when I was really on top of my anxiety, and when I had had some really good breakthroughs with my therapist, which I was still going to therapy throughout taking the anti-anxiety meds, I got to a level of kind of peace and calm that I hadn't had basically since I could remember. And I felt like my life got worse. I was wondering if I was addicted to stress. That phrase was running through my head a lot. I was feeling like I was just less good at life. Like I was less functional, less useful, less productive, like I was struggling to focus more. And what I kind of felt happening in my brain was that the anxiety and the associated feelings that had been very strong in me through my childhood for many different reasons, like shame and guilt and being afraid of screwing up, and being afraid of not being good enough, and being afraid of not doing the right things, making the right choices, thinking through all of the possibilities. I'm kind of painting a picture here, and it's not a nice one, is it? When I was able to really kind of deconstruct a lot of those feelings, I felt like my brain kind of had no motivation left. Not all the time with everything. Like it was not depression level where I was not wanting to get out of bed or not wanting to like hang out with people or talk to people or do anything. But for like general day-to-day stuff, I was struggling to get through it. And that was a really tricky time for a while there, trying to figure out how I was somehow better but also worse. It was very confusing. It was a very like upsetting and kind of scary place to be honest. And so through that, I did some more discovery work, shall we say, to try and find out what could be going on. And at the same time, I started getting a lot of like memes that really resonated with me that were ADHD based. And as a smart girl, right, in my time at school, ADHD was like the boys who are really mad, like throwing chairs around and stuff, right? That was ADHD. And so for me, it was like, okay, well, that's definitely not me. So that was a really weird thing to kind of try explore. And it took a while, but I got to a point where I was pretty convinced that the reason for a lot of my struggles and a lot of the difficulty that I had and a lot of the weird stuff that I experienced, where I said to my husband, who I now know is very neurotypical, like, hey, this thing that they say that's how, you know, your brain should work and productivity and like focus and organizing tasks, is that how that works for you? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, that's weird. There's a lot of moments like that, right? Led me to believe that I have ADHD. And this is where things got a bit tricky. So the process of actually getting a diagnosis. Firstly, I went to my GP because, no wait, I didn't go to my GP first. I went to Reddit. Firstly, I went to Reddit. And the reason why I went to Reddit is because, having looked up what you needed to get diagnosed and to then get support and meds and everything for ADHD, is you have to have a diagnosis given to you by a psychiatrist. This, I think, is pretty universal kind of around the world. You know, you can be diagnosed with a generalized anxiety disorder by any old doctor, but ADHD, you have to go to a psychiatrist. Most people who have an ADHD diagnosis get that in childhood. And so childhood ADHD versus adult ADHD can present very differently and requires a bunch of different questions. Like, obviously it's very different talking to a 7-year-old compared to a 27-year-old or whatever, right? Or a 67-year-old, for example. People do get diagnoses in their 60s and 70s, by the way. So I knew that I needed to find a psychiatrist who specialized in adult ADHD, and there aren't that many from what I can see. I also, just for myself personally, people had said that there was a really long wait time to get an appointment, and I couldn't think of anything more crushing than having to wait 6 months for an appointment and then have someone who just really did not understand what I was trying to say to them or trying to explain to them. So that is why I went to Reddit, to the ADHD New Zealand Reddit. I don't know exactly what it's called, to try and find out from people who are the good psychiatrists, the good practitioners who actually get this stuff, who are actually going to listen and understand and be able to really consider what you're saying to give an appropriate diagnosis if that is the case. So I found a psychiatrist who was still practicing. A few people, you know, a few psychiatrists that were mentioned had kind of moved overseas and stuff like that. So I found one, and it seemed like it was going to be a really, really good bet. There was a lot of good consensus about this psychiatrist. So then I went to my doctor, explained what I was experiencing and why I believed it was ADHD, and asked for a referral through to this particular practitioner. And they were open to doing that, and that was really great. Unfortunately, we ended up with a weird situation where my referral was on my doctor's end showing as sent and received, and it had not been received. And there was this weird back and forth where I was asking about like confirmation of it a month, 6 weeks after it had been sent. My doctor said, no, it's definitely been sent, you can contact them. And I contacted them and they said, you need to get your GP to send a referral. And at that point I was like, oh my God, they sent it like over a month ago and you're saying you haven't received it. It was this very weird back and forth. From my original wait time, which would have given me an appointment in July of this year, because of this delay, I was given an appointment in the beginning of September. And I'm pretty sure that I got that confirmed November last year. So it has been like a 10-month wait. No, actually more, because of course it wasn't confirmed on time, was it? So it was about, anyway, it was sort of a 10-ish month wait. And so in the meantime, I have just been coping as best as I can and trying to understand what I can, particularly around generic advice that is given to people around like productivity and focus and feeling like you're doing a good job and all of this, because a lot of it is tailored towards people who are neurotypical, which would make sense because that's the typical way that your brain should be working, right? And is really detrimental to people with ADHD. And this is something that I've really struggled with, and I really struggled with during COVID as well. And so kind of deconstructing all of that to better understand what is actually going to work for me rather than against me has been awesome. So figuring out that I thought I had ADHD, getting an appointment all set, we've got there. So the actual appointment. The appointment was online. It wasn't an in-person appointment. It was set aside for 4 hours. And so I literally took a sick day in advance saying I have this 4-hour medical specialist appointment. Can I take a sick day? And it was at their discretion. And they did give me the sick day, which was lovely. So I didn't have to take annual leave, which would have been the case otherwise. The appointment actually only lasted for 40 minutes. I think that the other 3 hours is all of the needing to write notes and send stuff out and all of that. So that is totally fine. But I had my appointment. I was very nervous. I think that as someone who grew up feeling like they weren't really understood or believed or had their feelings taken into account or felt like they mattered, and particularly having these ways of feeling and approaching things that doesn't line up with the typical, it was really scary. And it's especially scary every time you start talking to a new person and you don't know how they're going to respond. But my psychiatrist is really lovely. He was really, really great. And about 20 minutes in to our discussion, which didn't even fully reference like the questionnaires that I'd sent in as per their instructions, and the one that I'd got a family member to send in to try and sort of give backup proof without even fully discussing those, just talking about my experience of things. But 20 minutes in, he said, from what you're describing, that is absolutely ADHD. And that was really awesome and validating to hear. That was just really, really nice. It can feel really invalidating to be in a world that oftentimes thinks that people are just trying to be lazy or just want to be special or whatever kind of weird invalidating things that they think they're smart for coming up with. When there are people who are trying really, really hard to do their best and have days where they are trying so hard just to get the basics done. And on the outside, it looks like they're barely doing anything and they're giving like a quarter of their effort, and that person is feeling so drained and stressed just trying to do something that people think is just a crap job. And that sucks. And knowing that you are doing your absolute best and it's still going to be a crap job is so incredibly draining and demotivating and horrible. So anyway, having that validation was really, really awesome. We kept chatting for another sort of 25 minutes, so it was about 40 minutes total. And he explained some different concepts, and a lot of it I'd already heard. I like to be really well informed about things, and again, it's that invalidation piece. I feel like I have to have proof upon proof upon proof before I feel like I can even suggest something, right? But he gave me this concept of anticipatory anxiety, which is very, very closely linked with procrastination, which is something I really struggle with. And basically said that it's when you have ADHD and so you end up struggling to focus on and to complete a task, it then means that when you have something similar in the future or something that reminds you of this task, you are anticipating the fact that it's going to be difficult for you and that you're going to struggle and that you're going to feel like you've done a bad job of it and all of this. And so you are anticipating that difficulty, and that's that anticipatory anxiety, and that also causes procrastination because you don't want to do something knowing in your mind that it's going to be horrible and that it's going to be a bad experience and that you're going to do a crap job of it. And I told him, I was like, this is really interesting and new to me. I said to him, I was like, I'm just kind of searching in my mind right now to try and find any experiences of anxiety I have that couldn't be described as that. And I said it in a way that I was like, I'm really considering this, like I'm really trying to think this through. And he sort of smiled and he said, you can't think of any, can you? And I was like, no. He said, yeah, see, you don't have anxiety, you have ADHD, and the anxiety is associated with that. And I thought that was really interesting because I remember back when I got my generalized anxiety disorder diagnosis like 3 years ago, I said that I do sometimes feel depressed and I feel really down, but I don't think that that's the actual cause. I feel like that's a symptom of the anxiety stopping me doing things and making me freaked out about things and all of this that is then causing me to feel really down about that. And so then I feel depressed. And what I've kind of figured out through this is that it's actually the neural, the brain dysfunction of ADHD that is then causing the anxiety, that is then causing the depression. And so it's been a really interesting kind of discovery. So what next? I am currently pregnant, as I said, and although anti-anxiety meds are safe to take during pregnancy, the ones that I'm on specifically, I don't know if that's every single one, but the ones I'm on, they are safe to take during pregnancy. ADHD meds are not. And so there is no option for me right now starting on medication. Part of me really kind of wonders about that, but I'm also very happy with knowing that like I'm still on my life trajectory okay enough. This is something that I've made work in an okay enough way for a long time. I can do it for a bit more. There are also sort of counselling. There is also counselling offered sort of specifically associated with ADHD, and that gets into like cognitive behavioural therapy, etc. I sort of let my psychiatrist know that I'm not a big, I'm not drawn towards cognitive behavioural therapy. Basically, from what I understand, it's kind of trying to take your experiences and reframe them in order to try and change your experience of what's going on. I think that my past experiences of invalidation means that feels like a slightly unsafe environment for me, and so it's not something that I think I want to actively pursue at this stage. I think that the work that I've done so far to try and accept what's going on, to try and work with my brain rather than against it, and be more in tune with how my brain is kind of happy to work in this particular moment and trying to utilize that as best I can. I think that that's a really good place for me to be right now. I also am just feeling so grateful that I actually have this diagnosis now. This is, from what I understand, one of the hardest things for people. It's not actually getting access to the meds and getting the support for that. It's getting the diagnosis that they can actually start that journey. So I am super, super glad and super grateful that I have that now. Also, my psychiatrist is not nearly as expensive as some others, because even with really good private health insurance, specialists are covered, but psychotherapy and psychiatry are excluded from that. I kind of feel like it's also dental is excluded as well. It's like, oh, we'll look after your whole body except your brain and your teeth and your eyes, which is a bit of a pain. But I'm really lucky that I can afford to see a psychiatrist privately, and that this one was actually a lot more affordable than some of the others are. So that is where I am now at. So I can no longer walk around saying that I'm undiagnosed ADHD, because I am diagnosed ADHD, which is just so awesome to know. And I got off the call and I said to my husband, I was like, I feel like I need a cake that says, you have ADHD, like the little thing. And he was like, isn't that like a bit, I don't know, feels like a bit insulting? I was like, no, it's like I finally know. I finally have something to look at to say, see, this is why things aren't working. Like it feels like a happy thing to be able to know that that is what's going on. So here I am with that, carrying on, doing the best I can, making friends with other people with ADHD, because we all talk really fast and and generally get on quite well, and we're all just weird, but like it's all good because we're all just weird, and so it's fine. So I'm going to carry on doing that, carry on growing this baby, Moving to Germany in 10 weeks. Funny thing was, my psychiatrist is actually German, and so he was kind of interested in that. So that was quite funny. So we had a little chat about that too. And if you have any questions about my experience of this and how I kind of figured this out for myself and the process of getting the diagnosis, and any of that, or any more specifics on what I found useful, please feel free to ask that down below. This is something that is obviously new to me because I haven't had a diagnosis to work based off of up until like last week. So yeah, comment whatever you want down below. That's what I'm trying to say. And I will see you guys again soon. Bye.